Hi, so I wanted to start a quick new little video series that I'm going to call Breathing Lessons. No, I realize it isn't very original since that is the title of my book, which, by the way, I know we borrowed from another famous book by Ann Tyler, who's an infinitely better author than I am. But nonetheless, I still thought it would be fun to do some quick videos, just telling you some of the fun things that are actually in the book. So for this video, I want to talk about something extremely simple, but perhaps not intuitive, which is how we breathe. Have you ever thought about it? So in theory, there are actually two ways that air could get into the lungs. It could be pushed in, or it could be pulled in. So how would the air get pushed in? Well, if we were frogs, they fill their mouths up with air, and then they literally force it in a big gulp into their lungs, and that's how the air gets in. That would be what I'm going to call positive pressure breathing. But we humans are actually negative pressure breathers. So what does that mean? Well, in our chest cavity, we've got two lungs, and underneath them sits a large dome-shaped muscle we call the diaphragm. And when we breathe, the diaphragm contracts, and then the lungs are brought down passively with them. And then the air rushes in. There is a larger space that is created, which makes the lungs full of and creates a negative pressure container. And then the air just gets sucked in. So what does that mean? Well, there's actually some interesting implications. So for one thing, many of you are probably more familiar with mechanical ventilators now than perhaps you were before the pandemic. You may not realize that while ventilators are something we use to support patients who have lung failure, like with COVID-19, if you've ever had a major operation, you've probably been on a mechanical ventilator, because that's what we also use to support breathing when someone has a major operation and they're under general anesthesia. So the majority of you, if you're listening to this, probably have been on a mechanical ventilator at some point. But in order to get air into the lungs with a mechanical ventilator, we use positive pressure. We force the air in with with the machine. Now, what that means is that it is actually very uncomfortable to be on a mechanical ventilator. If you think about it, all of a sudden, if somebody was gusting air into your lungs every few seconds, it can be incredibly uncomfortable. And that's why for patients, for instance, that are really sick in the ICU, or if you're under general anesthesia, having your gallbladder taken out, we have to sedate you pretty heavily because it's uncomfortable. Now, older technology that we have, you may have heard of the iron lungs. These were ventilators of sorts that were used to support patients years ago who had polio. And as opposed to inserting an endotracheal tube down the throat and securing it in place and hooking someone up to these positive pressure mechanical ventilators, the way that the iron lungs worked was to kind of create this tight seal around the neck with some, for instance, rubber, and then the cavity of the iron lung that the body would sit in actually would expand and create negative pressure and actually pull the lungs out, almost like the diaphragm doesn't actually creates negative pressure. And so it actually is kind of crazy and old and clunky as it sounds, was actually an easy and comfortable way for patients to breathe, and for us to support a lot of patients during the era of polio. So if you ever wondered about how we breathe, there you have it.